Wednesday of the 20th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the book of Judges. All the citizens of Shechem and all Beth Millo came together and proceeded to make Abimelech king by the terebinth at the memorial pillar in Shechem. When this was reported to him, Jotham went to the top of Mount Gerizim, and standing there cried out to them in a loud voice, "Hear me, citizens of Shechem, that God may then hear you." Once the trees went to anoint a king over themselves. So they said to the olive tree, "Reign over us." But the olive tree answered them, "Must I give up my rich oil, whereby men and gods are honored, and go to wave over the trees?" Then the trees said to the fig tree, "Come, you reign over us." But the fig tree answered them, "Must I give up my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to wave over the trees?" Then the trees said to the vine, "Come you, and reign over us." But the vine answered them, "Must I give up my wine that cheers gods and men, and go to wave over the trees?" Then all the trees said to the buckthorn, "Come, you reign over us." But the buckthorn replied to the trees, "If you wish to anoint me king over you in good faith, come and take refuge in my shadow. Otherwise, let fire come from the buckthorn and devour the cedars of Lebanon." The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "Lord, in your strength the king is glad." O Lord, in your strength the king is glad. In your victory how greatly he rejoices. You have granted him his heart's desire. You refuse not the wish of his lips. Lord, in your strength the king is glad. For you welcomed him with goodly blessings. You placed on his head a crown of pure gold. He asked life of you. You gave him length of days forever and ever. Lord, in your strength the king is glad. Great is his glory in your victory. Majesty and splendor you conferred upon him. You made him a blessing forever. You gladdened him with the joy of your face. Lord, in your strength the king is glad.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew. Jesus told his disciples this parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out at dawn to hire laborers for his vineyard. After agreeing with them for the usual daily wage, he sent them into his vineyard. Going out about 9 o'clock, he saw others standing idle in the marketplace. And he said to them, "You too, go into my vineyard, and I will give you what is just." So they went off. And he went out again around noon and around 3 o'clock and did likewise. Going out about 5 o'clock, he found others standing around, and he said to them, "Why do you stand here idle all day?" And they answered, "Because no one has hired us." He said to them, "You too, go into my vineyard." When it was evening, the owner of the vineyard said to his foreman, "Summon the laborers and give them their pay, beginning with the last and ending with the first." When those who had started about 5 o'clock came, each received the usual daily wage. So when the first came, they thought they would receive more, but each of them also got the usual wage. And on receiving it, they grumbled against the landowner, saying, "These last ones worked only 1 hour, and you have made them equal to us, who bore the day's burden in the heat." He said to one of them in reply, "My friend, I am not cheating you. Did you not agree with me for the usual daily wage? Take what is yours and go. What if I wish to give this last one the same as you? Or am I not free to do as I wish with my own money? Are you envious because I am generous? Thus the last will be first, and the first will be last." The Gospel of the Lord.
The first reading comes from Judges 9, 6-15. In this particular passage, Jotham tells a parable which refers to Abimelech, his half-brother. Abimelech was the son of a concubine, therefore he would have been considered a secondary son of the great judge Gideon. Abimelech wanted to gain authority, wanted to inherit the status of judge in Israel. Now remember, that wasn't allowed. Judge was a charismatically called office, and children didn't inherit it. But Abimelech wanted this authority, he wanted this power. So he had all of his half-brothers killed, missing only Jotham. When Abimelech makes himself king, Jotham tells a parable. And the parable is that the trees wanted somebody to rule over them. They asked the olive tree said, no, I don't want to give up my oil. They asked the fig tree says, no, I don't want to give up my excellent fruit. They asked the vine says, no, I don't want to give up my wine. Only the thorn bush was willing to rule over the trees. But the thorn bush said, you can take shelter in my shade, but if not, fire will come out and devour you. In other words, yes, you've chosen Abimelech, but he's the worst of the bunch, and he's going to make your life miserable. That's what the parable is saying. Remember, Abimelech was choosing a thing that was forbidden in Israel. Therefore, there are consequences. That Abimelech will be miserable, but the people too who chose him will be miserable. There's a rabbinic saying, as the sin, so the punishment. That when we choose the sin, we're already choosing our punishment, because the sin carries in itself the loneliness, the egoism, the selfishness that will be visited upon us. The Gospel is from Matthew 20, 1-6. This is a parable about the end of time and judgment, and this is very typical in the Gospel of Matthew. Matthew tells a lot of parables about the final judgment to communicate the idea that our actions have consequences, that there will be a judgment at the end of time, and therefore we have to be careful what we do, how we act. Well, in this particular case, the man has a vineyard, calls in workers at dawn, a little later in the morning, a little later, right up to the end of the day. And when it comes time to pay these people, he pays the last first. Well, the last person who came in receives a denarius. A denarius is a typical day's wage. And therefore, the people who came early in the morning expect to receive more. And when they receive a denarius, they're kind of upset because it doesn't seem fair. They work the entire day and get a denarius. Somebody who showed up and worked for 20 minutes gets a denarius. It's not fair. The owner's response, who are you to tell me it's not fair? I'm being generous with the people who came last. Are you telling me I can't be generous? The message being, God's kingdom, God's love, will be given to those whom God wishes. We shouldn't judge them. We shouldn't say what's fair or not. When you come right down to it, God's mercy is not fair. If we want pure justice at the final judgment, we should be prepared to end up in a very hot place, because one little venial sin, we deserve to go to hell. We don't want justice at the final judgment. We want mercy. We want compassion. And God gives this in overflowing amounts. He gives us the mercy that we need, not that we deserve. And so likewise, we should be ready to share that mercy with others, whether they deserve it or not. And may God bless us.